Sorry. Ooh, everything we know about Joy Boy explained. Let's watch this.
In chapter 628 of One Piece, we're told for the very first time about a mysterious character called Joy Boy. And over time, he's turned into maybe the single most important character in the entire story next to Luffy. So let's dig into everything.
All right, hold on, chat. Before I do that, I need a little ripper here. I bet you ain't seen nothing. Yeah,
that we know about Joy Boy for a fact, as well as everything that has been heavily hinted at. Starting with why we know so little about this character in the first place. Well, you see, not having knowledge about Joy Boy is actually by design, because this person lived around 800 years ago. People who know One Piece know that these dates line up perfectly with a time period called the Void Century. Basically, the Void Century is an entire 100 years of history that's just gone. The world government, the organization that controls the entire One Piece world, eliminated every shred of information and history connected to this specific 100-year period. And so almost nothing of it all remains. No archaeological ruins, no books, it all just vanished without barely a trace. Except for one big exception, of course, the poneglyphs. These ginormous, indestructible blocks are scattered across the world in a mysterious language. And pretty much the only person in the entire world who's able to read the poneglyphs is Nico Robin, the archaeologist of the Straw Hat Pirates.
See, and that's
so
the
it's
underlying
thanks to Robin
story
reading a poneglyph
for
that
One
we
Piece.
first heard the name Joy Boy
Is the
in the
Void
series.
Century.
While the crew was on Fishman Island, Robin read a poneglyph there and told us that it described a promise between a man named Joy Boy and Poseidon from over 800 years ago. In case you don't know, Poseidon is this mermaid princess here, and it's one of the 3 ancient weapons whose power is always reincarnated through the Fishman royalty.
Yeah, so she's considered an ancient weapon, which is insane. You find that out in the Fishman Island arc. It's kind of nuts. That arc, you literally learn more about the Void Century in the Fishman Island arc than you do pretty much the entirety of One Piece.
The Fishman Island country. Whoever holds the power of Poseidon can command the Sea Kings, gigantic, super powerful sea creatures.
Yep.
And right now, the power of Poseidon belongs to the mermaid princess Shirahoshi, who Luffy saved during the Fishman Island arc. Always leave it to Luffy to save a princess. Now, the promise between Joy Boy and Poseidon 800 years ago had something to do with using the Sea Kings to lift up a massive ark called the Noah that sits at the bottom of the ocean. We don't really know, but it probably involves bringing the fishermen to live among the surface along with the other races of the One Piece world. However, for an unknown reason, Joy Boy was unable to hold up to his side of the promise. And so this poneglyph actually doesn't have any historical record on it, but is simply an apology to Fishman Islands. It was also around this same time that Joy Boy was also partners with Zunisha, a massive elephant, and I mean massive. Zunisha is confirmed to be 35 kilometers tall. That means that Zunisha is 3 times taller than the Sky Islands are located above the sea level. Zunisha is so big, in fact, that a whole island lives on top of it. The Minks, a race of animal-human hybrids, built their entire civilization called Zou right on top of this giant elephant. Now, the crazy thing is that 800 years after the Void Century, Zunisha is still alive and kicking and has even communicated with Luffy. Now, Zunisha doesn't literally talk, he communicates with other characters through a mysterious power called the Voice of All Things. This exact same power is also supposedly the way that Roger was able to read the poneglyphs without actually knowing how to read the characters. The thing is, though, that the entire 800 years, Zunisha wasn't just freely walking around the ocean, he was doing time. That's right, this elephant is a criminal. 800 years ago, after committing a still unknown crime, Zunisha was sentenced to walk a certain path in the ocean continually for all that time. It was only once Momonosuke gave him the order to do something else that he finally could. Now, for some reason, Momonosuke, the Shogun of Wano, has the power to communicate with Zunisha as well as give orders to this gigantic creature. And so next to the fact that Zunisha was Joy Boy's loyal comrade, there are only 2 more things that are actually confirmed pieces of information about Joy Boy. And number 1 is that Joy Boy actually was the one who left behind the treasure that we now know as the One Piece. Well, the series started off with the pirate king Goldie Roger telling the world.
What I think is the One Piece is one piece of treasure that Joy Boy gave to Goldie Roger before Goldie Roger died. And he hid it, and that's why Goldie Roger turned himself in, is so that someone else strong enough could find the One Piece.
That he left a treasure behind, the truth is a lot more complicated than that. Because in reality, at the end of his journey, Roger actually found some kind of object of enormous importance that was left behind by Joy Boy. And on that island, Roger learned the truth of the ancient history and the Void Century and wished that he could have been alive at the same time that Joy Boy was.
Damn.
The mysterious treasure that Joy Boy left behind caused Roger to laugh like crazy, leading him to actually name this island Laugh Tale. And he also reveals that for some reason he arrived at Laugh Tale too early. There goes Oda being really mysterious about this entire thing once again. Now, we're not sure why Roger was too early in arriving to Laugh Tale, but it probably has to do with Joy Boy's second coming, a prophecy. Ooh. That's right, Joy Boy is coming back. According to this long-held prophecy, Joy Boy would be reincarnated 800 years after the Void Century, or 20 years after Roger reached Laugh Tale. Now, this prophecy is known in parts thanks to a character named Kozuki Oden, the former shogun of the Wano country. In fact, the Kozuki clan in ancient times were the one who actually wrote the Poneglyph.
Luffy is the second reincarnate of Joy Boy. Is that what we're getting at here?
Lives in the first place. Now, Oden sailed with Goldie Roger to Laugh Tale and kept a logbook of their travels. And so when Roger and Oden learned that they'd arrived too early and that in 20 years Joy Boy would return to Wano, it led Oden to make his goal opening Wano's borders to welcome Joy Boy back in 20 years later. And the other thing that we know for a fact about Joy Boy is that he is none other than Monkey D. Luffy. That's right. Our main character, Luffy, is the second coming of the legendary hero Joy Boy. Man. We know that because during his fight with the Emperor of the Sea, Kaido, Luffy awakened a new power. What Luffy calls Gear 5th is actually the awakening of his Devil Fruit. And so after all these years in the series, we finally learned that Luffy's Devil Fruit wasn't actually the rubber fruit, it was a super powerful devil fruit called the Sun God Nika Devil Fruit. Now, we still don't know much about this deity called Sun God Nika, but we can guess that it's connected to Joy Boy in some way or form. When Luffy transformed his hair and clothes, turned all white, he couldn't stop laughing. He also gained new powers that are seemingly only limited by his imagination. When Luffy first appeared in this new form, he was also jumping across the battlefield silhouetted by the moon. And this mirrors the very first time that we learned about the Sun God Nika from Kaido's subordinate Who Is Who. Because this guy doesn't only have a really strange name, but he also tells us that while he was in prison, fellow inmates would tell hopeful tales of a liberator called the Sun God Nika. And during this explanation, we also saw a figure with a very similar silhouette to Gear 5 Luffy. However, when Luffy finally awakened this form, Zanisha, the giant elephant, said something really fascinating. He said that he could hear the drums of liberation, seemingly referring to Luffy's heartbeat. And he then announced that Joy Boy has returned. And so clearly, Luffy, Joy Boy, and this Sun God Nika are all super closely related somehow.
Damn.
It's kind of ironic that Luffy awakened this Joy Boy form while fighting Kaido, because it seems like Kaido was trying to find Joy Boy or possibly even become Joy Boy himself through his entire life. It was hinted at a lot that he might have chosen Wano as his base of operation because the prophecy hinted that Joy Boy would appear in Wano first. Kaido's right-hand man, King, had told him the legends of Joy Boy long ago, and Kaido seemed to become fascinated with the prophecy and legends of Joy Boy freeing the world. Now, Kaido almost defeated Luffy several times during their massive battle. After one defeat, he dropped Luffy into the sea, stating, "So you couldn't beat Joy Boy either." Clearly, Kaido had seen others try and fail to fill the role of Joy Boy before. In fact, it might be the case that Kaido himself has failed.
The thing about Luffy is the more he loses, the stronger he gets. He takes an L and he comes back strong. You literally can't keep Luffy down. Why are you doing this, computer?
at becoming Joy Boy. And even after seeing Kaido's flashbacks, much of his past is still mysterious. In retrospect, it seems that he was obsessed with being the strongest, with creating warfare all across the world, and with being the strongest crew in the entire ocean because he wanted to bring about the return of Joy Boy. That's why he followed this rule of survival of the fittest. After all, part of the prophecy of Joy Boy's return involved Wano country and its borders opening. That's because Wano had closed its borders for centuries and was basically isolated for the rest of the world. Joy Boy, someone who spreads joy and happiness, and the sun god Nika, who represent freedom, as well as the drums of liberation. All of these are connected in ways we can't quite understand yet. However, since it's still such a mystery that gives the fanbase a huge opportunity to make awesome theories about how Joy Boy will play a part in the story, we gotta talk about a few of those. But before we get into those, if you don't want to miss any updates on Joy Boy or One Piece in general, this would be a great chance to subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this type of content. First off, let's look at the likely origin for Joy Boy, because Oda might actually be drawing on history when creating the idea of Joy Boy in One Piece in the first place. Because the idea for Joy Boy very likely comes from the Haitian god called, well, Joy Boy. In voodoo beliefs, Joy Boy is a god of hope and music. It's likely that Joy Boy was originally an African god that was then brought to the Caribbean during the slave trade.
That makes sense.
This god of happiness and music is said to spread laughter and joy with drumming and dancing, which would seem to connect to the ideas of the drums of liberation pretty perfect. This Haitian god also gave hope to enslaved people, which would seem to parallel
It's
what
funny
we've been
because
told about
the other video I watched about Luffy being Joy Boy referenced this same party that this one's referencing right now. And the dance that Luffy did and everything else.
Is a symbol of hope for enslaved people in the One Piece world as well. And to some fans, it seems like Joy Boy and his huge significance for the story have basically come out of nowhere pretty late in One Piece. However, we all know that Oda is the master of foreshadowing and left us a lot of clues before as well. We already mentioned that Joy Boy was originally mentioned on a poneglyph all the way back on Fishman Island, but we've been getting plenty of hints even before that as well. Like in Skypiea, when Luffy was seen silhouetted in front of a bonfire in a pose that looks just like the sun god Nika. Oda has even said that it was one of his top 3 favorite panels of the entire series that he's drawn. And in the very same arc, the Shandorans are being told to worship a sun god as well. The Giants also worship a sun god, and the Sun Pirates, who were formed by former slaves, wear the mark of the sun on their body, an early hint about slaves praying to the sun god Nika for their freedom. Now, all of these oppressed people are awaiting the dawn of the world, a dawn that can only come with the arrival of the sun. So now let's talk about some of the craziest theories about this legendary character. First off, did original Joy Boy also wear a straw hat? You probably recall that in a frozen cellar on the castle Meridiua, the capital of the world government, the secret ruler of the world government.
You know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, he may have, because Shanks got the straw hat from Goldie. Where did Goldie get the straw hat from?
Emu keeps a massive straw hat in a frozen basement. But why? Did this secret object belong to the first Joy Boy, Luffy's predecessor? And what then is the significance of the smaller straw hat that was passed down from Roger to Shanks and then to Luffy?
Exactly.
Also, what did Joy Boy really do that was so significant? We have so little information about him that it's really hard to say what he might have done. Could he have been the ruler of the ancient kingdom that went up against the world government? The story has recently revealed that the ancient kingdom was technologically super advanced, so if Joy Boy was its ruler, could he have had control over the ancient weapons as well? For sure, holding that type of power would be enough to make the world government fearful as well as jealous. I mean, it's even possible that Joy Boy did create the ancient weapons in the first place. Well, I mean, if he's much like Luffy, probably not. But speaking of that advanced technology that Dr. Vegapunk has revealed existed in the ancient kingdom, what connections does Joy Boy have to their mysterious power source? Does Joy Boy have something to do with the recently revealed giant robot that climbed the red line and tried to attack Meridiua 200 years ago? We have only just learned about this powerful new weapon of the ancient kingdom, but it seems pretty convenient that at the same time it attacked Meridiua, fishmen were also starting to fight for their rights. And does the mysterious technology of Joy Boy's ancient kingdom have something to do with the people fighting for liberation or the coming of the dawn?
Chat, there's a lot of
Joy Boy was the
spoilers in
world's
this
first
video.
pirate. Maybe he was a literal pirate king. Not in the sense that Roger was pirate king, like having achieved all a pirate could hope to achieve, but Joy Boy might have been the actual ruler of a giant pirate kingdom. So it would make a lot of sense that the world government, which was 20 kingdoms back in the time, would try to erase his existence.
Yeah,
he was
that
their
would
enemy
make
in their
sense.
war for supremacy over the One Piece worlds. In addition, if he was a pirate, it would only make sense that the world government would outlaw piracy, even against pirates who don't steal or harm any of the people. And it's also very possible that Joy Boy had the exact same dream to Luffy, wanting to spread freedom and joy around the worlds. Maybe he united all of the oppressed races of the One Piece world in one country. Because if Joy Boy or the
I can't wait to
are
get
beacons
caught
of
up.
hope for all the enslaved and suppressed
I just need
people,
more dubbed
perhaps
episodes. I
his
tried to
dream
watch
was to
subbed and
bring
I just
people
couldn't
together
do it.
and prevent any form of discrimination or hates. For instance, the promise to the fishmen might have been to use the Argnoa to bring them to the surface so that they could live under the sun alongside the humans. A dream that all the fishmen have had for centuries.
Yep.
Perhaps the Minks wouldn't have had to hide on Zanisha's back anymore and could also step into the light as well. And maybe Luffy will be able to keep the promise that the original Joy Boy broke. Also, if the original Joy Boy had a giant straw hat, does that mean that Joy Boy was a giant?
Yeah, because that straw hat's
that
huge.
long ago, could he have been an ancient giant? In fact, there's some pretty strong evidence that Joy Boy could have been Oris, the giant zombie that the warlord Gecko Moria revived, or one of his predecessors.
Really?
After all, if
I didn't
Joy Boy
even
had
think
a
about
giant
that.
elephant and a giant straw hat, shouldn't he be a giant himself as well? And maybe it was more than a coincidence that Luffy's shadow ended up being inside Oris.
Yeah.
But if all of that is not yet convincing to you, then you will probably need to check out this video all about Joy Boy was an ancient giant right here.
Oh, should we check that one out? Should we